Welcome to Crisis in Perception, where we examine the systems shaping our world one book at a time. All right, so in this explainer, we're diving into a really powerful idea from the legal scholar Jody David Armour. We're going to tackle a super tricky question. How can a system produce racially biased results when nobody in that system thinks they're being racist? It's all about how these invisible forces, things like legal standards, our own mental shortcuts, and the stories our culture tells, can come together to create a system that almost has a life of its own.
And that really brings us to the central puzzle, doesn't it? How is it possible for a system to create such profound inequality when all the people in it believe they're being completely reasonable and logical? Now, I want to be really clear here. This isn't about pointing fingers or judging individuals. This is about taking a step back and looking at the design of the system itself.
Okay, so to really get our heads around this, we need to rewind a bit, back to the late 20th century. This was a time with all these intense debates happening around concepts like colorblind justice. And right in the middle of all that, Jody David Armour drops this totally groundbreaking idea that he calls reasonable racism.
So here's the absolute core of his argument. Armour says that whenever the law brings up the idea of a reasonable person, you hear that all the time, right? It basically opens up a back door. And through that back door, unconscious bias can just sneak right into the legal code itself. What that means is, all of a sudden, the fears and the gut feelings of the majority group, what they think is dangerous, gets this official stamp of approval. It gets institutional legitimacy.
Okay, but here's where it gets really wild. This whole thing isn't a one-off problem. It actually becomes self-reinforcing. It feeds itself. So let's pop the hood and look at the engine that drives this thing. It's a feedback loop, one that ties our perceptions directly to the law.
It really all kicks off with the stories a society tells itself. Think about it. Social and media narratives often link blackness with risk or threat. So step one, that's the story. Step two, those stories start to shape our automatic, intuitive reactions, the stuff we don't even think about. Now here comes step three. The legal system steps in and has to judge someone's actions based on that reasonable person standard. And here's the final piece of the loop, the real kicker. When a court decides that a reaction based on that fear was reasonable, the law itself ends up validating the very stereotype that started the whole cycle in the first place. So you see the loop? Culture shapes our gut feelings, those feelings shape the law, and then the law turns around and reinforces the culture. Wow.
So this isn't just a theoretical loop, right? It has a real-world cost, a heavy one, and Armour gives it a name, the black tax.
And no, this isn't a tax that comes out of your paycheck. It's a tax paid in mental and emotional energy every single day. The black tax is this constant, absolutely exhausting burden that falls on Black individuals to manage every little thing about how they're perceived, how they dress, their tone of voice, even how they walk, all to avoid accidentally triggering someone else's threat perception.
I mean, just try to imagine the mental load here. It's like running a constant internal checklist in every interaction. How am I dressed? Does my tone sound okay? Am I standing too close to this person? Every single one of those thoughts is a tiny calculation, a micro-adjustment. It's self-modification as a form of risk management just to navigate the world safely.
This whole thing really pushes us to ask a much bigger, more fundamental question. What is the law even for? Is it supposed to be a tool we use to actively build a better, more just society? Or is it just supposed to be a mirror, simply reflecting society back at itself, warts and all? Because how you answer that question, well, that goes a long way to explaining why this system is so incredibly resistant to change.
So basically, there are two big schools of thought here. On one side, you have the instrumental view. Think of it as law as a tool. If the tool isn't working right, if it's producing unfair results, you fix it or build a new one. But on the other side, there's the non-instrumental view. This is more like law as a mirror. It says the law should just reflect our shared values and common sense. Its job is to accommodate how people already are, not to try and change them.
And this is Armour's critical point. He argues that when the legal system buys into that law as a mirror idea, when it treats our collective gut feelings as some kind of neutral, objective common sense, it basically puts up a protective shield around our cognitive biases. They're no longer open to being questioned or scrutinized because, hey, it's just common sense, right? The system's flaws get locked in place.
So, let's put all the pieces on the table. When we do, we see something pretty profound. Perception isn't just a personal, internal thing happening inside our heads. In this system, perception is the infrastructure. It's the roads, the bridges, the very foundation the whole thing is built on.
All right, let's actually map this system out. Who are the players on the field? Well, it's a huge cast. You've got jurors and judges, the ones who officially define what counts as reasonable. You have police officers making those split-second decisions on the street. You have defendants caught up in the machine. And then you have the media, shaping the narratives, and of course, the public, which absorbs all of it.
And what's motivating all these people? Again, it's probably not conscious malice. It's much more basic, powerful incentives. Things like protecting the stability of the institution, ensuring your own personal safety, just wanting to keep your job, or even social approval, wanting to be seen as doing the right thing. All of these incentives naturally push people to just keep things the way they are.
And finally, what are the tools the system uses? What are the actual levers and gears? Well, you have things like evidentiary standards, the very specific instructions that get read to a jury, the discretion that police have in their day-to-day work, and, coming full circle, those cultural narratives that feed the whole loop to begin with.
And this, right here, is the key to why this system is so persistent. It can keep chugging along, producing these unequal outcomes without needing a single person in it to be an explicit card-carrying racist. All it needs is for people to rely on those unconscious, automatic mental shortcuts we all have. And that's exactly why today's debates over things like self-defense laws or police discretion are so incredibly charged and difficult. They all come back to that one slippery, powerful word, reasonable.
When you step back, what Armour's work does so brilliantly is make this hidden cycle visible. He shows us how perception itself can become infrastructure, how a system can churn out inequality without any active hostility. And maybe most importantly, he shows us that if we're serious about creating real, structural change, we have to be brave enough to look at the very architecture of reason itself.
We want to give a huge thank you to Jody David Armour for this truly foundational work. Seriously, if any of this sparked your curiosity, we can't recommend enough that you read Negrophobia and Reasonable Racism. Go grab a copy or check it out from your local library to really dig into these ideas. This project is free and publicly accessible. If you'd like to support the time, tools, and research behind crisis and perception, you can become a supporter on Patreon.
For a shorter visual overview of this topic, see the mini explainer linked in the description.
If you enjoy this kind of systems-level analysis, please like, subscribe, and comment with books or topics you'd like us to explore next.